17 years old and already judged guilty of being black. The sound of Jose Harmon's gavel echoes like a hammer on chains. Gustavo rises slowly, his back straight despite the weight of every stare pressing down on him. The judge leans forward, eyes sharp, voice heavy with contempt. I know your kind. Just another statistic. No discipline, no father figure. Where is your father, anyway? Gustavo doesn't flinch. He looks the judge in the eye. May I call him, Your Honor? A smirk. By all means, if he even answers. Gustavo dials. The courtroom holds its breath. His voice is steady. Dad, Jose Harmon says you failed to raise me right. He'd like to know where you are. Can you come to courtroom 4B? Hours earlier, Gustavo wasn't supposed to be here. He was supposed to be in room 302, proudly presenting his science project, an advanced air quality monitoring system he designed to track pollution in low-income neighborhoods. His work proved what residents already knew. That toxic air was choking their communities, and no one in power seemed to care. But Gustavo never made it to the committee. At security, the metal detector beeped. Officer Diego seized his project like it was a weapon. What's this contraption? He demanded, flipping it over carelessly. An air quality monitor, Gustavo explained, voice calm. I'm scheduled to present to the environmental committee. Diego narrowed his eyes. Looks suspicious to me. He barked into his radio. Possible device. Uncooperative subject. Backup arrived. Hands on holsters. Commands shouted. And from across the lobby, Jose Harmon stood watching. Robes flowing, arms folded, silent approval in his gaze. Gustavo froze. Around him, white professionals breezed through security with laptops and briefcases. A white student carried a science fair board past the checkpoint, unnoticed. Gustavo, meanwhile, texted his father. Delayed at security, might miss presentation. He almost typed the truth, targeted, humiliated, treated like a suspect. But why add more weight to his father's shoulders? Instead of celebrating his scientific achievement, Gustavo found himself dragged into Harmon's empty courtroom. His carefully built monitor lay in pieces on a table. Explain again what this thing does, the judge muttered, not looking up from his phone. It measures particulate matter in neighborhoods like mine, sir. I've been tracking the link between poor air quality and rising asthma rates. Harmon flipped through Gustavo's papers, then tossed them aside like trash. And why bring this into my courthouse? The environmental committee meets here monthly. I was invited to present. Dr. Manuel confirmed. The judge cut him off, voice sharp as steel. Are you telling me how to do my job? Gustavo swallowed hard. No, sir. Just providing information. Harmon rose, looming above him. His voice thundered. I've sat on this bench for 20 years. I've seen every excuse, every scheme. You're no different. And you will learn respect. Today. The crash is deafening. A sensor shatters on the marble floor. Months of Gustavo's labor lie in pieces, scattered like broken hope. Sir, that's my research. Months of work, Gustavo says, voice trembling but firm. Jose Harmon chuckles, low and dismissive. Research? Is that what they're calling it now? Who really built this? Where did these parts come from? I built it myself, Gustavo answers steadily, with grant money from the State Science Foundation. The judge narrows his eyes, rolling a circuit board between his fingers as if it were contraband. A likely story. Let me be clear. This courthouse isn't your science fair. His smile is thin, cruel. We'll hold this device for inspection. Maybe you'll get it back, eventually. Gustavo stares at what's left of his project. This wasn't just wires and sensors. This was proof. Hard data showing how polluted air poisons his neighborhood. Now, reduced to scraps under a judge's suspicion, it looks like evidence against him instead of for him. May I at least have a receipt for my property, Your Honor? Gustavo asks quietly. The judge's grin falters. Getting legal advice from somewhere, are we? Gustavo waits outside the courtroom, each tick of the clock mocking him. His scheduled presentation draws closer, yet security blocks him from room 302 without the judge's approval. Then a familiar voice. Gustavo, there you are. Dr. Manuel, silver-haired and sharp-eyed behind wire-rimmed glasses, strides toward him. Why aren't you setting up? We start in 15 minutes. Gustavo swallows. Jose Harmon confiscated my project. He says it's suspicious. Dr. Manuel freezes. That's absurd. You're our keynote student presenter. They march back to Harmon's courtroom together. The judge is on a call, holding up a finger to make them wait. When he notices Dr. Manuel, his posture shifts, straighter, suddenly formal. Jose Harmon, Dr. Manuel begins firmly. There's been a misunderstanding. Gustavo is our invited presenter. Harmon barely glances at him. This young man brought unauthorized electronics into a federal building. That requires proper investigation. It's a science project I personally vetted, Dr. Manuel insists. The judge's eyes sharpen. Did you run background checks on him? On his family? Do you know where he's from? Gustavo's cheeks burn. I was born in Chicago, sir. My family has lived there for generations. A dismissive snort. Your project stays confiscated. If you want, Dr. Manuel, you can take responsibility for him attending the meeting without it. But his entire presentation requires the device, Dr. Manuel protests. Then he should have thought ahead before bringing suspicious equipment into my courthouse, Harmon snaps. His voice grows louder, harsher. Perhaps he can explain to the committee why he's unprepared. Consider it a lesson. Gustavo's hands ball into fists at his sides. May I at least have my slides? They're on the same laptop you've taken. The judge smiles without warmth. Run along, and Mr. Taylor, next time, know your place before you walk into my courthouse. Heart hammering, Gustavo follows Dr. Manuel into room 302. 12 committee members sit around a long table. Observers line the walls, pens poised. Every head turns toward him. I apologize for the delay, Dr. Manuel says, voice clipped. We encountered an unexpected situation. Gustavo steps forward. The humiliation still stings, but his voice remains steady. Jose Harmon has confiscated my project and presentation materials. I'll do my best to explain my findings from memory. A ripple of whispers sweeps the room. Gustavo catches pity in some faces, skepticism in others. In the back row, a woman shakes her head and scribbles something in her notebook. And there he stands, 17 years old with nothing but his memory, his resolve, and the weight of an entire community on his shoulders. Gustavo walks to the front of the room with nothing in his hands but determination. No slides, no equipment, no polished graphs. Just memory and grit. For a moment, the silence feels unbearable. Then he begins. My study compares air quality between wealthy districts and communities like mine. His tone is steady, then grows stronger as he speaks. Over 6 months of testing, pollution levels in minority neighborhoods measured 3 times higher than in affluent areas. The committee members, who at first seemed distracted, now lean forward. Gustavo borrows a sheet of paper and starts sketching diagrams by hand. Airflow patterns, data points, emergency room statistics. Every spike in particulates matches a rise in asthma attacks, he explains, marking lines with a pen. The evidence shows enforcement of environmental laws changes with the demographics of a neighborhood. What began as a humiliating setback transforms into an electrifying presentation. By the time he finishes, the room bursts into applause. Extraordinary, says Dr. Charles, the committee chair. And under these conditions, impressive. His brows knit. But why isn't your equipment here? The presiding judge held it back for security reasons. Gustavo replies carefully. Charles's expression hardens. Highly irregular. We'll investigate. In the meantime, your research should be shared widely. Would you consider presenting at the State Science Conference? Gustavo feels the relief flood through him. Yes, sir. I'd be honored. In the restroom afterward, the adrenaline collapse hits him hard. He presses against the stall wall, hands shaking as he pulls out his phone. Straight to voicemail. Dad, something happened today. The judge confiscated my project. I managed to get through it, but I could use some advice. Call me when you can. Outside, Dr. Manuel is waiting. Gustavo, that was masterful. I've never seen a student handle themselves like that. Thank you, Gustavo says. Do you think I'll get my project back soon? We'll try. Back in the courtroom, Jose Harmon sits on the bench, presiding over routine cases. Gustavo watches carefully. A white man in a tailored suit receives patient, almost indulgent questioning. Minutes later, a young Latina defendant is cut off repeatedly, her words dismissed before she can finish. The pattern is obvious. An hour crawls by before Harmon finally addresses them. Mr. Taylor, still here? Yes, Your Honor. I've finished my presentation. I need my equipment returned. Not today, the judge says coldly. Security hasn't cleared it. Dr. Manuel interjects, voice firm. Jose, the project contains months of unique data. He cannot simply rebuild it. You should have thought of that before carrying unauthorized hardware into a federal building, Harmon snaps. Gustavo meets his gaze calm but unyielding. When will I get it back? When it's deemed safe. That may take days, or weeks. Gustavo offers a polite nod, concealing the fire in his chest. He thanks the judge, then leaves without breaking stride. In the hallway, he dials another number. Uncle Christopher, I need legal advice. They're holding my project in a federal courthouse. Tell me everything, his uncle replies. The next morning, Gustavo walks into school with the weight of it all still pressing on him. Miss Charles, his physics teacher, pulls him aside. Dr. Manuel told me what happened. What's going on? He explains plainly, stripping away emotion. Her face hardens. That judge had no right. Have you spoken with your father? He's away in Washington. I left him messages. Don't give up, Gustavo. The state science fair is still expecting you. You'll find a way. I'll have to rebuild from the ground up, he murmurs. At lunch, his phone buzzes. A text from an unknown number. Your equipment scheduled for disposal tomorrow morning. Security protocol. The text from his friend still stings. Sorry, they're disposing of it tomorrow. Gustavo's chest tightens. Months of air quality data gone by morning. He tries his father's number again. Voicemail. Always voicemail. After school, he marches back to the courthouse. A different guard stands at the entrance. I need to speak with Jose Harmon, Gustavo says, steady but urgent. Jose is gone for the day, the guard replies flatly. Try tomorrow. It can't wait. My work is scheduled for destruction. A shrug. Not my problem. Down the corridor, Gustavo spots Officer Diego. He strides over. My project's marked for disposal. It contains critical research. Please, just let me take the data drive. Diego smirks, arms crossed. Jose's orders. Maybe next time you'll think before carrying suspicious gear in here. Just the drive. A single blue module. It has all my results. No unauthorized access. Forget it, kid. Learn your lesson. He turns away. Gustavo steps into the cold air outside, fury bubbling but contained. He calls his uncle. They're trashing it tomorrow. I can't get through to Dad. Document everything, Uncle Christopher instructs. Names, times, exact words. I'm already making calls. That evening, Gustavo buries himself in wires and circuit boards in the garage, soldering with frantic precision. His mother leans on the doorway, arms folded. Gustavo, she says gently. Sometimes the fight costs more than it's worth. He doesn't look up. This one matters. Why? Because, he thinks, it was never only about a project. He sets 2 wires in place and whispers, when they seized my monitor, they weren't just breaking a machine. They were trying to bury evidence. Jose Harmon's courthouse sits in the middle of one of the worst air pollution zones in the city. My data shows it. Maybe that's why he wanted it gone. His mother's eyes widen. You believe this was deliberate? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. The next morning before sunrise, Gustavo stands on the courthouse steps with a folder of notarized documents Uncle Christopher helped him prepare overnight. Grant receipts, project ownership forms, scientific validation letters. He rehearses his words as he waits. When Jose Harmon arrives, his surprise is brief, quickly replaced by disdain. Persistent, aren't you, Mr. Taylor? Yes, Your Honor. I have legal documents confirming my project's legitimacy and requesting its immediate return. Harmon barely glances. File it with the clerk. I've got a full docket. Sir, security intends to destroy my work this morning. Not my department, Harmon snaps, stepping to move past. Gustavo sidesteps respectfully, blocking the path without aggression. Your Honor, I've recorded every step of this process. If my property is destroyed without due process, I'll be forced to escalate. The judge freezes, eyes narrowing. Is that a threat? No, sir. It's my right as a citizen. Harmon leans closer, voice a low growl. You have no authority here. In my courthouse, I decide what happens. Gustavo answers evenly. This courthouse belongs to the people, sir. The judge's face reddens. You need a lesson in respect. Diego. Officer Diego appears. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Taylor is causing a disturbance. Escort him out. I'm standing on public property with notarized documentation, Gustavo replies calmly. Harmon points to the papers. Those look forged. Confiscate them. Diego hesitates. Sir, you heard me, Harmon barks. Gustavo clutches the folder. These are notarized, legitimate records, grant approvals, ownership proof. The judge leans in, voice dripping with contempt. You think paperwork protects you? You're nothing here, don't forget it. Before Diego can act, a courthouse administrator rushes over. Jose Harmon, urgent call, line 1. Harmon stiffens, then withdraws. This isn't finished. He storms inside with the administrator. Left behind, Gustavo turns to Diego. His voice is quiet, almost weary. I just want my project back before it's destroyed. Why are you helping him break the law? Diego shifts uncomfortably, eyes darting toward the door Harmon disappeared through. For the first time, he doesn't have a ready answer. Diego shifts uneasily, his voice dropping low. Kid, I've only got 3 years until retirement. Don't drag me into this. Gustavo's reply is sharp, cutting through the air. Is a pension worth helping bury proof of discrimination? Diego doesn't answer, but the guilt flickering across his face says enough. Who made that mysterious call that pulled Jose Harmon away? And what storm is about to break? By mid-afternoon, Gustavo is still sitting on the wooden bench outside the courtroom doors. His school bag at his feet, documents in hand, he refuses to leave. Lawyers stride past with curious glances. One stops. A woman in her 40s, neat bun, quick stride, sharp eyes. You've been here all day, she observes. Court matter? I'm trying to get back my confiscated property before it's destroyed. She sits down beside him. Sandra, public defender, tell me. Gustavo lays it out, handing her the notarized papers. At the name Jose Harmon, she exhales hard and shakes her head. He has a history. Let me make a call. As she steps aside, Gustavo checks his phone again. Still no call from his father. Only a text from Uncle Christopher. Hold tight. Reinforcements on the way. Sandra returns, face grim. Administration says your device is already in disposal, but if we move fast, we might still stop it. They race downstairs to the basement, where confiscated items are stored before destruction. A guard blocks their path. This young man's property is being unlawfully discarded, Sandra argues. Orders are orders, the officer replies, unmoved. Through the small window in the door, Gustavo glimpses his project on a table, half disassembled, wires spilling like veins from a wounded body. That's mine, he pleads. Please, it's months of research. It proves communities like mine are being poisoned. Step back, or I'll have you removed, the guard warns. Sandra pulls Gustavo aside. We need a judge's order. I'll file an emergency motion. Just then, the elevator dings. Jose Harmon steps out, his smirk sharp as a blade. Miss Chen, I see you've chosen to spend your day with agitators. Your Honor, she fires back. This property belongs to my client. I'll be filing for an emergency stay to halt its disposal. Harmon chuckles. Save your breath. I declared it a security risk myself. On what grounds? Sandra demands. My courtroom, my authority. He waves to an officer. Escort them out. As of now, Mr. Taylor is banned from this building. Gustavo steps forward. His voice is steady, but his eyes blaze. I've been respectful. I've obeyed every rule. Why are you doing this? Harmon's cold stare cuts into him. Because I can. Some people need to remember their place. Sandra grips Gustavo's arm tightly. Don't respond. We'll fight this another way. As they're ushered out, Gustavo glances back through the glass. Harmon has entered the disposal room. The judge picks up a hammer. He's going to smash it himself, Gustavo whispers, horrified. Sandra's jaw clenches. Now it's personal. We're calling in heavier firepower. Outside, Gustavo paces the sidewalk while Sandra frantically calls other judges. Every answer is the same. No time, no willingness to cross Harmon. She lowers her phone, frustrated. No one's willing to intervene today. He's untouchable here. Gustavo's phone finally rings. He snatches it up. Dad. Son, comes the deep, steady voice of Mark. I know, I've been briefed. Dad, they're destroying my project right now. Put me on speaker. Confused, Gustavo complies. Sandra raises an eyebrow as the commanding voice fills the space. This is Mark. Who am I speaking to? Sandra clears her throat. Sandra, public defender. Your son's work is about to be destroyed by order of Jose Harmon. I understand, Mark replies evenly. Here's what you do. Escort my son back into that courthouse. Demand to see Jose Harmon immediately. If anyone interferes, tell them to call this number. He rattles off a government extension. Sandra's eyes widen. Mr. Taylor, that's a federal line. Exactly, Mark says. Now go. Back at security, the guard blocks their way. Mr. Taylor is banned. Sandra stands tall. We need Jose Harmon. If you refuse, call this number. She holds up her phone. The guard dials, listens, then stiffens. His posture shifts instantly from smug to deferential. Yes, sir, at once. He hangs up, almost bowing as he steps aside. Proceed to Jose Harmon's chambers. As they make their way down the echoing corridor, Gustavo leans toward Sandra. What just happened? Sandra's brow furrows. I was about to ask the same thing. Who is your father? He works for the Justice Department, Gustavo says quietly. That's all I know. At the judge's chambers, the clerk tries to block their entry. Sandra simply holds up her phone again. The clerk vanishes inside, then reappears. The judge will see you now. Inside, Jose Harmon stands stiffly behind his desk. Gustavo's battered project sits in front of him, the hammer lying just inches away. This has gone far enough, Harmon snaps. I've already ruled. That device stays confiscated. Sandra steps forward. Your Honor, we were instructed to call this number if you refuse to release Mr. Taylor's property. She raises the phone. Harmon sneers. Some bureaucrat in D.C. doesn't dictate my courtroom. Then dial it yourself, Gustavo says, his voice calm but cutting. Something in the teenager's composure rattles the veteran judge. Slowly, Harmon takes the phone and dials. This is Jose. Who am I speaking with? His voice is impatient, until it isn't. His face pales as he listens. Yes, I understand. But the device, yes, sir, of course. When he hangs up, his hands tremble. Your property will be returned immediately, Mr. Taylor, he mutters. In its original state, with every bit of data intact, Gustavo adds. Harmon nods stiffly, unable to meet his eyes. As they turn to leave, Gustavo's phone rings. He answers on speaker. Is it resolved? His father's steady voice asks. Yes, Dad, thank you. Good. Now hand the phone to Jose Harmon. I'd like a word. Sandra stares at Gustavo in dawning disbelief. Harmon reluctantly takes the call, face drained of color. This is Jose Harmon. The reply thunders from the speaker. Jose Harmon, this is Mark, Attorney General of the United States. I'll be in your courthouse at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning to discuss your conduct and the disturbing pattern of bias in your courtroom. Clear your docket. Harmon nearly drops the phone. Yes, Mr. Attorney General, of course. He retreats, shaken, into his chambers. In the hallway, Sandra exhales a whistle. Your father is the Attorney General? Gustavo nods. Appointed last year, we keep it quiet. No wonder Harmon looked like he'd seen a ghost. She studies the battered monitor. Tell me, this project, was it really just air quality data? Gustavo runs his hand over the cracked casing. 6 months of readings, and the maps line up. The worst pollution zones overlap perfectly with the harshest sentencing patterns in Harmon's courtroom. Sandra's eyes widen. You uncovered environmental racism, without realizing it linked straight to judicial bias. I only wanted cleaner air for my neighborhood, Gustavo says softly. I didn't expect to expose corruption. The next morning's sunrise paints the city gold, but outside the courthouse the air buzzes with tension. News vans crowd the steps, reporters jostling for position. The rumor has spread. The U.S. Attorney General is arriving unannounced. Inside, Jose Harmon paces like a caged animal. Phone pressed to his ear, he hisses, Senator, you promised protection. I've always ruled in your favor. You can't abandon me now. A click. Silence. He slams the receiver down. His clerk enters, face white as chalk. Sir, the FBI is in the lobby. FBI? Harmon stiffens. Taylor isn't wasting any time. He straightens his robes, trying to summon dignity he no longer feels. At a side entrance, Gustavo and his father arrive. Mark walks tall, composed, FBI agents at his flank. His calm presence fills the hall. He glances down at his son. You all right? He asks gently. Gustavo nods. Better now. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Mark squeezes his shoulder. You didn't do anything wrong. You stood firm. You showed respect. And you revealed the truth. I couldn't be prouder. Mark places a steady hand on his son's shoulder. This isn't just about your science project anymore. They step into a conference room where Sandra is waiting, surrounded by Justice Department officials. Along the wall, city maps glow under harsh fluorescent light, neighborhoods shaded in red and yellow. Ms. Chen has been invaluable, an aide explains. She compiled evidence that Jose Harmon's rulings follow a clear pattern of discrimination. Sandra gestures to the maps, and the pattern overlaps exactly with Gustavo's research. The districts suffering the worst environmental neglect are the same ones where Harmon's sentences against Black and Latino residents are disproportionately harsh. Mark studies the pins and lines with sharp eyes. And these areas also happen to be where Senator Donald has quietly invested through his shell companies? Yes, another aide confirms. Property bought up cheaply after environmental rules were ignored or deliberately unenforced. Gustavo looks down at his battered device. The realization lands heavy. That's why Harmon wanted it destroyed. My data connects every piece. Mark turns toward him. You uncovered more than pollution. Your project exposed corruption. A knock interrupts. The door swings open. Jose Harmon enters, his face a mask of forced calm, his lawyer close behind. The atmosphere in the room drops several degrees. Attorney General Taylor, Harmon begins, voice rigid. All of this for a teenager's science project? Surely this spectacle is unnecessary. Mark doesn't extend his hand. His voice is cold steel. This isn't about my son's project. That incident pulled the thread. What we found on the other end is a web of misconduct. He points to a chair. Sit. For the next hour, charts and documents fill the table. Officials detail discriminatory sentencing data, selective enforcement of environmental statutes, and a suspicious trail of phone records. In neighborhoods with high minority populations, the same neighborhoods Gustavo had measured choking on smog, prison terms were 40% longer for the same crimes compared to white communities. Another chart shows call logs, Harmon's chambers contacting Senator Donald's office on the eve of rulings that directly boosted the senator's real estate ventures. Harmon's attorney interrupts again and again, but every objection only leads to another damning exhibit. This is a witch hunt, Harmon bursts out finally red-faced. I've served faithfully for 20 years. Yes, Mark answers evenly, and we've examined 20 years of your rulings. Explain to me why defendants from Black neighborhoods consistently receive sentences nearly half again as long as their white counterparts for the same charges. Or perhaps, he leans forward, you'd prefer to explain these phone calls with Senator Donald's office right before your environmental rulings. The judge's color drains. His lips tighten. I want immunity. His lawyer stands abruptly. My client will not answer further questions. Mark nods. An aide slides a paper across the table. Jose Harmon, you are hereby placed on administrative leave pending full investigation by the Department of Justice. Harmon's voice cracks. You can't do this. Mark rises. I'm not doing this. Your own actions are. He turns away. The Judicial Ethics Committee meets this afternoon. I suggest you prepare. As Harmon and his attorney slink out, Mark turns back to his son. What you did proved something we long suspected, that environmental racism and judicial corruption are bound together. Gustavo brushes dust from his half-broken monitor. All I wanted was to help my neighborhood breathe cleaner air. And you will, Mark assures him. Your data is now evidence in a federal environmental justice case. Sandra steps forward with a faint smile. The Environmental Committee just called. They want you to present again tomorrow, this time under Justice Department protection. By nightfall, the story hits the airwaves. Headlines flash across screens. Federal Jose suspended amid racism and corruption probe. The city and the nation are watching. Gustavo sits on the living room couch with his parents, the glow of the television filling the room. The news anchor's voice is crisp, urgent. Sources confirm a federal inquiry was launched after a high school student's research project was seized and nearly destroyed by Jose. The data reportedly exposes a pattern of environmental laws being selectively enforced against minority communities. Gustavo's mother turns toward her husband. How far is this going to go? Mark's eyes remain on the screen. Far. Donald's companies have been buying up land poisoned by neglect. Once the communities suffer enough to drive down value, his people swoop in, buy cheap, and profit after cleanup. Gustavo's project put their entire scheme under a spotlight. But why target our son's work? She presses. Because numbers don't bend. Gustavo replies quietly. My sensors built a map. The same neighborhoods choking on bad air are the ones Harmon punished most severely. It tied environmental racism to judicial bias in a way they couldn't ignore. Mark's phone rings. He listens silently, then exhales. Donald's calling the investigation a political stunt. Is it political? Gustavo asks. Mark meets his son's eyes. Justice is never political, but people who fear it always hide behind politics. The following morning, Gustavo stands before the Environmental Committee once again, this time with his project fully rebuilt, glowing monitors humming. FBI agents line the walls like shadows. These measurements cover 6 months across multiple neighborhoods, he explains. Charts flicker on screens, his voice steady. Violations are reported everywhere, but enforcement overwhelmingly favors wealthy areas. Communities like mine are ignored, left to breathe poison. The committee leans in, absorbing not just the data but the gravity of what it represents. This research, Dr. Charles announces, will be central to our federal investigation. Mr. Taylor, the committee would like to fund expansion of your monitoring system to cover the entire city. As the meeting disperses, Sandra finds them. Harmon's attorney called, she says. He's seeking a deal. Mark raises an eyebrow. So soon? Sandra nods. He knows we have him cornered, and word's spreading fast. 3 other judges with similar records have stepped down already. Donald's development stock collapsed 30% this morning. Gustavo listens, almost stunned. His science project, born in a high school lab, has triggered a cascade of accountability. What happens next, he asks. Justice, Mark replies, and maybe finally cleaner air for your neighbors. A week later, the Judicial Ethics Committee convenes in a chamber overflowing with reporters, attorneys, and citizens. Cameras click. The atmosphere hums with anticipation. At the front, Jose Harmon sits diminished without his black robe, flanked by his legal team. His once commanding posture has collapsed into nervous fidgets. At the back, Senator Donald lurks with his advisors, whispering frantically. The moment Mark enters with his son, the senator slips out a side door. The chair gavels the hearing open. We are here to review evidence of misconduct by Jose, including racially biased sentencing, improper dismissal of environmental complaints, and potential corruption tied to private development interests. First to be presented is Gustavo's rebuilt device. Data streams across screens, charts comparing respiratory illness with pollution spikes, graphs linking environmental case dismissals to demographics. The committee chair speaks firmly. This evidence, originally collected as part of a student research project, revealed systemic patterns we could no longer ignore. Harmon's attorney rises sharply. A teenager's science fair project cannot be admissible evidence. The chair cuts him off. The methodology has been independently validated by 3 universities. The findings stand. Next comes the avalanche: phone logs, banking transfers, and statistical breakdowns. The web is undeniable. Harmon's ruling systematically shielded Donald's companies, letting violations pile up in minority communities while he punished their residents with harsher sentences. During a recess, Gustavo overhears 2 committee members whispering in the hall. Their words are hushed, but one phrase sticks in his mind. This is bigger than one judge. When the gavel strikes again, all eyes turn to the witness chair. Jose Harmon sits stiffly, the arrogance drained from his face. What replaces it is something quieter: survival. I admit, he begins cautiously, that statistical disparities appear in some of my rulings, but there was never intent to discriminate. The panel does not relent. Case after case is laid bare. Identical charges, same circumstances, yet sentencing swung wildly depending on a defendant's neighborhood or race. And your repeated calls to Senator Donald's office prior to environmental rulings? A committee member presses. Harmon freezes a beat too long. The senator is an old friend. We discussed many things, including which environmental cases to dismiss in order to support his development initiatives. Gasps ripple through the chamber. His attorney scrambles to cut in. My client wishes to amend his testimony. But everyone already knows what's unfolding. Harmon leans toward the microphone. His voice is low, almost resigned. I'm prepared to provide full cooperation regarding Senator Donald's involvement, in exchange for leniency in my own proceedings. The chair glances at Mark. He gives a single nod. This hearing will recess while Jose Harmon provides a sworn statement to Justice Department officials. Outside, the hallway erupts with reporters. Gustavo hangs back as his father steps into the crush of cameras. Today is a milestone, Mark declares firmly. Environmental justice is not optional. When pollution laws are enforced only for some neighborhoods and ignored for others, we are deciding which children deserve clean air and which do not. That is unacceptable in America. Through the crowd, Gustavo catches a glimpse of Harmon being escorted down a side corridor, shoulders bowed, eyes heavy. For the first time, the judge looks small. Their gazes lock for an instant. Harmon looks away first. That evening, breaking news flashes across every screen. Senator Donald resigns, citing health reasons. Markets tumble as his development firms call emergency board meetings. The EPA announces fresh investigations in a dozen cities showing similar patterns. At home, Gustavo watches the coverage in silence until his mother speaks softly. You never meant for any of this. No, Gustavo admits, but I can't regret it either. Mark loosens his tie and sits beside them. Harmon handed over everything: names, dates, bank transfers. The corruption ran deeper than we imagined. Will it matter? Gustavo asks. For neighborhoods like ours? His father nods. The EPA is fast-tracking cleanup in affected areas. And your monitoring system? It's becoming the model for community oversight nationwide. Gustavo leans back, absorbing the weight of it. What began in his garage now drives federal policy. One person stands firm, Mark says quietly, and others follow. That's how change begins. 3 months later, Washington, D.C., a national conference on environmental justice. Gustavo stands at the podium, taller now, confidence radiating through his words. Beside him, the rebuilt and expanded air quality monitor glows like a beacon. Environmental justice isn't theory, he tells the packed room of scientists, officials, and activists. It's about who breathes clean air, who has safe water, and which children grow up without playing in poisoned soil. Behind him, screens shift from deep red to calming green, city maps showing drastic reductions in pollution levels. 3 months ago, these neighborhoods had particulate levels 3 times above federal limits. Today, with enforcement applied equally, those levels have dropped by 70%. In the front row, Mark sits beside Sandra, now leading the Justice Department's new task force on environmental equity. Both watch with pride as Gustavo concludes. My project started as a school experiment, but what it revealed is simple. Justice is measurable. When laws protect only some, the data shows it. And when people demand accountability, change follows. The room erupts in applause. After delivering his keynote, Gustavo takes his place on a panel beside leading scientists, legal scholars, and policymakers. The moderator wastes no time. The Taylor case has become a turning point, announces EPA Director Harrison. We've replicated his monitoring model in 30 cities. Everywhere we look, the data uncovers the same troubling reality: environmental enforcement skewed by race and class. A Justice Department official leans into the microphone. With Senator Donald now indicted, investigations are underway in a dozen more states. Jose Harmon's cooperation has proven instrumental in exposing how deeply this network runs. Gustavo listens in stunned silence. What began as a high school experiment has grown into a national reckoning. When the audience Q&A begins, a student asks about reforms to the courts. Judicial Ethics Chair Lopez responds firmly, "New transparency standards are now mandatory. Every environmental ruling must be accompanied by written reasoning and subjected to statistical analysis. Bias will no longer hide in shadows." Later, father and son walk side by side across the National Mall. Children run across the grass, their laughter carrying on clean air. Donald's companies are paying billions in settlements, Mark tells him. The agreement includes neighborhood remediation and health clinics focused on asthma and respiratory illness. Gustavo watches a group of kids chasing a kite. But will it last? That depends on people like you, Mark answers. Systems don't stay honest on their own. They change when someone challenges them, and keeps challenging them. Gustavo's phone buzzes. He glances down and freezes. A full scholarship, he breathes. State University, Environmental Science and Law. They want me to expand the monitoring system statewide. Mark smiles. From a garage project to shaping state policy. Not bad for someone who just wanted cleaner air for his block. Gustavo shakes his head, still astonished. I never expected all this. That's how change works, Mark says gently. It starts with one person refusing to accept injustice, even when the world tells them to stay quiet. Another alert flashes across Gustavo's screen. 3 more judges suspended in other states. It's spreading, Gustavo murmurs. Mark nods. You pulled one brick loose, the entire wall is starting to crack. He gestures toward the gleaming Department of Justice building across the mall. Next week, we'll announce a national initiative for environmental justice, built on your model of community-driven monitoring and transparent enforcement. 1 year later, Gustavo walks the streets of his old neighborhood. Once barren sidewalks now bloom with young trees. Professionally manufactured monitors, modeled on his design, stand at intersections, their readings visible to anyone with a phone. He pauses outside the courthouse where it all began. The stone facade hasn't changed, but the institution inside has. A bronze plaque gleams by the entrance. Environmental Justice Review Board, established after the Harmon-Donald scandal. This time, security waves him through without hesitation. The guard nods respectfully. Morning, Mr. Taylor. Inside the main atrium, children crowd around interactive screens that chart the city's improving air quality. At the center of the exhibit sits his original device, scarred but carefully restored, labeled Catalyst for Change. Sandra greets him there, now officially the Justice Department's Special Counsel for Environmental Justice. The exhibition travels to Chicago next month, she tells him. Your project has sparked initiatives in 47 cities. How's the judicial reform effort going? Gustavo asks. 17 judges under review. 5 already resigned. And Harmon? She smirks. Community service. His plea deal requires him to work in the very neighborhoods his rulings damaged. A fitting irony. Together, they walk toward a conference room where Mark waits with Justice Department officials and community leaders. A new era of accountability is beginning, and Gustavo, once just a teenager with a science fair project, is at its heart. Large maps cover the conference room wall, neighborhoods once forgotten now shaded in green instead of red. The numbers are clear and undeniable. Enforcement has finally reached the places that needed it most. Childhood asthma admissions are down 32%, a health official reports. We're seeing the same decline in adult respiratory illness. Entire families are breathing easier for the first time in decades. Mark pulls his son into an embrace. Your monitoring system isn't just a project anymore, Gustavo. It's the national standard. Gustavo shakes his head slowly, still absorbing it all. It was never about the sensors or the graphs. It was always about the question: who gets protection under the law, and who doesn't? A community elder stands, voice trembling but steady. We lived with poisoned air for generations. We begged for help, but without data, they dismissed us. You gave us proof. You gave us a voice. Mark nods. Justice needs evidence, yes, but it also needs people who refuse to be silent. Afterward, father and son walk the streets where the story began. Children race across a new playground where an illegal dump once rotted. Old men and women sit on porches, breathing cleaner air than they've known in years. Donald's sentencing is tomorrow, Mark says quietly. His company will pay for remediation for 20 years. Gustavo watches a group of teenagers installing a fresh monitor on a lamppost. They're carrying it forward, he says. Mark smiles. That's what makes change endure. It survives the generation that began it. At Gustavo's old school, a banner waves proudly, the Gustavo Environmental Science Academy. Inside, classrooms buzz with students hunched over monitoring stations, learning to use data as a weapon for truth. You know what Harmon told me during his community service, Mark says. He admitted he never believed one person could change the system, especially not someone young. It wasn't just me, Gustavo answers. It was everyone who refused to stay quiet after the first domino fell. The sun sinks low, painting the neighborhood in gold. Gustavo takes it all in. The parks, the cleaner skies, the academy alive with possibility. The system only works if everyone is truly protected by it, he says. That's the lesson, Mark replies. Justice isn't automatic. It demands vigilance, proof, and the courage to challenge power when it strays. Gustavo smiles at the simple truth that has reshaped his life. Your place, he says softly, is wherever you decide to stand. Epilogue. To the reader. Gustavo's journey reminds us that justice doesn't move on its own. It moves because people push it forward. One student with a science project forced a nation to confront its failures. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Share it. Talk about it. Let it remind someone that their voice matters, that their fight matters. Because one act of courage can ripple outward, toppling walls no one thought could fall. You've seen what one person can do. The question now is simple. What will you do?